Don't run from the Foresters, Rayford isn't very large. You could drive through it and miss it if you weren't careful. There are 3 stoplights, a little movie theater that plays movies from 20 years ago, a drive-in diner, a couple of shops on Main Street, and a lot of thick old-growth forest that surrounds the whole thing. It's peaceful, but most of us end up leaving after high school. There aren't a lot of job prospects here, and those who stay run the risk of losing kids to the woods. Not really the woods, I guess. More like losing kids to what lives in the woods. They call them foresters, and they live in the deepest parts of the forest. They're supposed to be the spirits of loggers who have been killed in the old growth, which is a great way to get kids into the logging industry, let me tell you. They only come out after dark, and most people are smart enough to avoid them. The town has rules that every kid is taught from a young age, and most of us follow them for our own safety. It's not like they can be easily forgotten either. They're posted around town by the city council, and there are only a few of them, so it's pretty easy to keep them in mind. 1. Don't go out after dark. 2. If it's foggy, don't go out at all. 3. If the fog suddenly appears, stand absolutely still until it passes. 4. This is absolutely important. If you see a forester, don't run. Stand perfectly still until they leave. It sounds crazy, right? Why wouldn't you run from some monster who lives in the fog? In reality, the posters don't do them justice. They don't have any pictures of the foresters because most people who encounter them don't survive. The survival rate is something like 10%, so I guess that makes me an anomaly. I am one of about 4 people in town who have met a forester and lived to tell the tale. My brother, however, was not so lucky. It happened about 10 years ago when I was 10 and he was 12. We had been at his friend Tyler's house, playing Halo 2 and just kind of hanging out. The age difference between my brother and I wasn't too substantial, and our friend groups often intertwined. Tyler was a friend of mine as well, and I still talk to him every now and again. He blamed himself for what happened to my brother, but I told him it was a fluke. It could have just as easily happened while we were on our way there as when we were heading home. It was summer, and that meant longer days. We knew the sun wouldn't officially set until about 8:30, and we figured we had all the time in the world. We were having a lot of fun blowing each other up and running people over with the warthog, and we were all laughing like loons as the people online used some pretty colorful language to tell us how they felt about it. That's what I try to remember about that day when I try to remember it at all. I try to remember my brother laughing hysterically at some kid calling him bad words, or how he thumped my shoulder and told me I'd made a good shot. I try not to think about what happened later. So, when Tyler's mom came to ask if we were staying the night, we told her we couldn't because our mother had made us promise we would be back before sunset. Then you boys better hurry, she said, it's 7:55. My brother and I looked at each other, and I could tell he was feeling as panicky as I was. Not because we were afraid of the foresters, though. Both of us thought the foresters were just an urban legend that the town used to drum up what little tourism we got and keep the local kids in line. No, we were more afraid that our mother would tan our hides if we were late getting home. Whether or not we believed in the foresters was irrelevant. She believed in them and would accept no backtalk when it came to being home on time. We thanked Mrs. Foster and left in a hurry after saying bye to Tyler and promising to be back tomorrow. We hit the road running, our sneakers eating up the pavement. Tyler lived about 20 minutes from our house, a run that was nothing to a couple of kids, barely into their teens. We had no doubt that we could make it before sunset, and my brother even jostled me as he invited me to race. The two of us were soon huffing and puffing as we ran, the woods on our left as far from our minds as they could be. We were coming up the road, the sun still visible on the horizon, when Tyler noticed something weird. It was like we had walked into a cloud, and it took us a minute to put 2 and 2 together. The fog usually waited till dark to roll in, but it could appear at any time. I remembered the yard monitor pulling us off the playground last year because the fog was rolling in. The teacher had closed all the windows, and we had held class in the shadowy room until an announcement said that the fog had passed. We had been told our whole lives not to go into the fog, but it appeared the fog had come to us. Whatever, my brother said, we're like a block from home. Let's just keep going. But we aren't supposed to go into the fog. I reminded him. We're already in it now. In order to get out of it, we have to go through it. Come on, what are you afraid of? I was hesitant, not wanting to get in trouble for breaking rules, but seeing the sense in what he was saying. I didn't really believe in the foresters, no more than I believed in the boogeyman, but the rules were something I did believe in. Rules were rules, and I knew that if you broke the rules, then you got punished. As a kid, you never want to get punished, but my brother was making a lot of sense too. If we were out after dark, we'd be breaking another rule, and the after dark rule was a big one. The fog was growing dense around us now, and when I reached out for my brother's hand, he took it. He led me into the fog, and we started making our slow way home. We knew the way home well. We had walked it from school or from town many times, but as the fog grew thicker, it almost seemed like we were moving across alien terrain. I imagined us being transported somewhere else, like Narnia, and I was afraid that we would come out in a very different forest. I remember wondering if there would be somewhere for us to stay and something for us to eat when we came out, and when my brother sighed in relief, I looked up. There was something in the fog, something not too far away, and my brother had clearly thought it was someone else lost in the fog. Hey, over here, he called. Can you help us? We're lost in the fog. I was happy we had maybe found a way out until I saw the thing move. When it moved, you could tell it wasn't a person. It bent too much, seeming to want to crawl on all fours. Its arms looked like they had healed badly after being broken, and its whole body leaned at weird angles. It was more than that, though. It's hard to explain, but seeing it move made the hairs on my body stand up. It awakened something in me that I hadn't known was there, something ancient and dormant. I suddenly understood why the rules had said not to run, because all I wanted to do at that moment was get as far away from this thing as I could. I had a primal urge to get away from this time. I wanted to run as fast as I could, that sleeping part of my brain telling me that danger was near me, and the only thing that I could do before being eaten alive was run. Run, my brother yelled, clearly feeling the same, and the two of us took off at top speed. We ran back the way we had come, just hoping to escape the fog and make it back to reality. We glanced behind us, checking to see if it was following, but the creature was just moving along at a leisurely pace. It was in no hurry, its movements not rushed in the least, but the farther we ran, the less distance we seemed to make. The fog was limitless, the depths too deep for anything to permeate it, and I felt that ancient part of my brain start to gibber as the fear overloaded it. "Why isn't it chasing us?" my brother asked, looking back over his shoulder as he ran. He was unsure of what to make of the creature, its lack of haste confusing him, and I kept looking forward as often as I looked back and hoping a second one wasn't going to rise up to hem us in. When my brother fell, I stopped and turned back to look at him. The creature was about 15 feet behind us, impossibly close. I was torn, stuck standing as still as I could as my body and mind told me to run for my life, but another little voice told me to stay still and remember the rules. He had twisted something, his ankle standing at an odd angle, and when he reached for me I almost went to him. The only thing that stopped me was the incessant voice of the school assemblies, of Anti-Forester Fred, the town's safety mascot, and the knowledge that if I moved, I would be dead too. Anti-Forester Fred says, "If you see a forester freeze like a statue," I mumbled. My brother was nearly howling in agony. He had rolled onto his stomach and was looking at me from the pavement. He raised an arm, reaching pitifully for me, but his position meant that he hadn't seen the shape as it got closer and closer to him. He was calling my name, begging me to help him, but all I could do was shake my head with minute little shifts and watch the forester get closer and closer. I looked down when he cried out, his leg throbbing as he drug himself across the pavement. "Help me," he begged, "help me. Don't let it get me. Come on, you know I'd help you." I looked down at him, torn between wanting to help and wanting to freeze, and the overpowering urge to simply take off again like a deer being pursued by a hunter. The creature was walking, almost strolling, as it came out of the mist, and it took everything I had not to flee when I saw it look my way. It was like a zombie, but so much worse. Its skin was rotten looking. Insects crawled in and out of it as it stood there, and parts of it were twisted and strange. It was missing its left leg, and a thick tree branch replaced it. Something had caved in half of its head on the left side, and the forest had made an approximation of its face out of wood, which it wore like a skullcap and mask. Parts of its left arm, parts of its chest, they had all been worked through with wood, and when it bent down to grab my brother, it groaned like a tree in a high wind. He looked back when it dragged him off, and as his screams disappeared into the mist, he seemed to disappear from the world as well. I watched him go, and as he did, I sat down on the pavement and put my head against my knees. I tried to stay as still as I could, but I was sure that if any of the foresters had been close they would have seen my trembling. I just closed my eyes and prayed that it would end, that it would all go away, and when I started to hear someone calling my name, I opened my eyes and found that I was sitting in the middle of the road, the sun still hanging on the horizon, as my mother came running up the road to find me. She wrapped me in a hug, asking where my brother was before scooping me into her arms and carrying me back to the house. According to her, it was 8:20. My brother and I had run through the fog, he had been taken, and I had knelt shivering in the mist for hours, while less than 10 minutes had actually passed. Rayford isn't a large town. You can drive right through it if you aren't careful. It's been 10 years since my brother disappeared, but I think about him every day. The movie theater is still there. The dinner burned down when I was a junior, and the shops on Main Street have gone from boutiques and antique shops to cell phone depots, electronic stores, thrift outlets, and the occasional knick-knack shop. The forest, however, hasn't changed at all. The forest is eternal, at least until my chainsaw has something to say about it. We cut the forest back, we log the old trees, but we don't go near the old growth in the heart of the forest. That place is said to be haunted by the restless spirits of the loggers who came before us. The old growth was old when the first settlers cut the first tree in the Rayford woods. A few of the older loggers claim to have been there and seen the place, but say it's best not to go close to dark. You gotta have your wits about you if you go there, and you never want to be in the woods after the sun goes down. I had always figured I would leave Rayford like most of the young people do, but it seems that the young people who stay have lost people to the foresters as well. Mothers, daughters, husbands, fathers, sons, cousins, it doesn't matter who. It binds the community together, draws us closer, and makes us hope that someday the foresters might bring them back. I have a little more hope than that. I mean to make them bring my brother back. It's taken me 10 years to get out of town and into the old forest. I will make my way to the old growth. I will find out where the foresters live. I will find my brother again. I was weak when they took him, but now I can do more than cower on the hot top as they drag him off to the woods.